Yes, Rameen.
Right. So now we know
Yeah.
5 minutes.
I had registered.
Hi, Rameen. We were just getting ready to begin. And so your timing is, impeccable.
Just trying to get the boss on too, so.
Okay. All right. We'll wait a minute or three. Um, uh, There's Courtney. All right. I could tell a bad joke, but
Well, it is being recorded though, so.
uh, any luck, Rameen?
Somebody else is responsible for getting him on, not me.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Well, then,
We can get started though.
yeah. Right. So thanks, everybody, for taking the time to participate in this winter breakout session, a workshop where we're going to talk a bit about and hear from you about, most especially, about a proposed changes to our general education, particularly requirements. In our general education. So I'll turn it over to Rameen right now so he can begin with a little bit of groundwork, and then I'll try to, together, we can work through the handouts or materials that I sent out last night. And if you haven't seen it, that's fine. We'll be able to talk about through them anyway together. So Rameen, if it's all right, I say over to you.
All right. Hi, guys. Just probably a few minutes by the way of background. As you know, State University of New York is changing its curriculum beginning fall 23. So there are things that we have to do in order to comply with the expectations that they have set for us. Most of what we're doing with general education probably is a good fit with what SUNY is proposing, but there are some adjustments that definitely are needed in that context. The other thing that Scott Furlong, our provost, is very keen and interested in is the addition of the signature course requirement to the general education program, which will have impact for us because it does at least begin to cover some of the learning outcomes with our communication requirement, which is a SUNY requirement. This has both writing and oral requirements, and certainly starting students off with that experience would be extremely helpful to us, and the signature courses could potentially do that. I should also say that I have approval from my boss to put out a call for course development for signature courses, which people will be stipend to actually develop them and teach them. They will, that call will probably go out from Kristen Croyle and other folks that run the signature courses for us in the next week or so. John, just as a side note, John, Scott still can't get in. If you can send him something, I don't even know what it is he's missing. I didn't do anything to get on, so seems to be having trouble. I don't know if there's a link you could send him to click on. He seems to need a passcode. I'm really not sure what that means. So coming back to the conversation, in envisioning the inclusion of a signature course and potentially a 1-credit freshman seminar that extends orientation into the semester, we then had to think through, well, how do you make room for it? Because you can't just keep adding to the curriculum. We were there before. Some of you are too young to know, but we were at a 42 credit average before 2011, 12, whenever we changed Gen Ed. And that was really problematic. And it was delaying graduation for our students. We were having to deal with significant number of deviations. So I am definitely one hoping not to go there again. So that's kind of where I stand on this. So that's kind of where the potential options, I mean, you have a side-by-sides with a number of options. That's really where they come from in trying to address a big issue of, if we added, one of the options tells you what happens to the total credits. And then what can you take out? Because there are some things that are required by SUNY. They can't be not required, right? I mean, they have to be required. So when you're reviewing those options, and if you're wondering why foreign language in an option is coming out, it's because it's an option. SUNY doesn't require students to have foreign language. So if we were to not require something, that would be a candidate, as an example. Natural science is not an option. The students have to have that type of an experience. That's a requirement by SUNY. So that's why there isn't a column there that says, let's move natural science to student choice. It can't be. It has to be taught as is English 102, as is math, and so on. So I think I'm good there. I'm just going to hand it back to Chris and then go find out if Scott was able to log in.
Right. So
I did send him more information.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Rameen. Just to begin by piggybacking on what Rameen said, as we thought about the possibility of a first-year seminar, we heard from a bunch of folks, including Scott, but also faculty members and academic professional staff who have worked closely with our first-year signature courses now and in the recent past. And that, to reiterate, one of the things that that enables us to include a first-year seminar, right, at least as we're imagining it, as part of general education required of all entering students who have not yet completed 12 credit hours of undergraduate education at a university or college, is the fact that presently our first-year signature courses have an oral competency or oral literacy component, right? And as Rameen says, general education, SUNY general education, joins into one category, basic communication, what we do in writing with English 102, all right, and then what we're supposed to be doing, all right, with our infused oral literacy in the major. I rather think that, as Rameen says, giving students an exposure early on, right, and some experience with and practice in oral communication, all right, would function much like English 102, which is foundational college composition, all right, followed by then writing in a particular major. So I don't think we want to necessarily get rid of our infused oral literacy element in the major and in the program, right? If I can share the screen, I'll just put up the side-by-side that Rameen alluded to so that everyone can see it. And then it's really pretty straightforward. But before we get to it, because otherwise I'll forget to say this, the other thing that we are going to have to do that's not connected to first-year seminar, all right, and again, it's something really mandated by a system, is we as an institution are going to have to vote formally to do away with the Western civilization category. We can talk about why that needs to be done later if there's time, all right, but that's another portion of that prose document that I sent along with the side-by-side that you have in front of you. And again, I apologize for not getting it to you until late last night. And so I can well and truly understand why you didn't get through the prose piece. Presently, in academic year 22-23, this is our general education program. And the reason why it's 33 to 36 at this time, whereas the year before it was 30 to 33, is because we made diversity, identity, and social justice in the United States a requirement, right, ahead of SUNY making it a requirement. Soon, the new SUNY general education program called SUNY GE, according to them, takes place beginning with fall 2023. So
This meeting is being recorded.
good. So then, as Rameen said, there are a number of possible versions, right, that the council developed after conversation with, again, many people interested and with experience regarding first-year seminars. All right, the first version A simply adds, all right, the seminar to general education, all right, in the required field without a reduction in hours anywhere else, right? After that, versions B, C, and D, all right, add the first year seminar, all right, but, all right, remove something, all right, either from the required field, right, or the number of hours needed in the student choice in order to try to get us, right, as close to the SUNY minimum of 30, all right, and what we've been striving for here is at most 30 to 33 with general education prior to this one strange outlier year when we were a bit ahead of SUNY general education. As Rameen said, that when we thought about, well, where do we have a degree of freedom to play with categories, whether they're required or optional, all right? And they are in the areas of foreign language, which we required and system does not, all right? It's an option according to system, all right? And in world awareness, which we require, all right? And system does not, all right? So you'll see in version B, right, foreign language is removed from required, all right, but still exist as a choice for students, right? And in version C, world awareness, right, is moved from the required group, right, but remains a choice in the student choice field. All right. If you had a chance to at least browse the prose document, part of our thinking with regard to keeping diversity, identity, and social justice and world awareness, all right, as both required but also as options in student choice is because that's in keeping with the institution's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The other thing I'll say before I start asking if there are any questions about this and more generally, what do you think about what you're seeing? All right, is that, and this is a minor change in one sense, but an important one, we think, is to do away with the 200 level general education elective, all right, prescription when that field opens up, all right, when it opens up moving forward, it would just be any general education elective rather than needing to be at the 200 level. Again, the last thing I'll say is that if they're a transfer student, right, they will not be required to take the first year seminar. And that's why you'll see credit hours might says 0 to 4, because if they're a transfer student, it's not a required for them. Requirement for them. All right. Rameen and Courtney, because Courtney's with us, and Scott too. Did I miss anything in just a quick gloss of the side-by-side? All right.
No, I don't think so, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Courtney. And all right, as I said, we've heard from lots of people. And the council has spent a great deal of time in the fall semester working on this. The council's not yet voted, all right, to move this on to faculty assembly. All right. And part of the reason why the council hasn't done that is because the semester is short, but also more critically, all right, we also want to hear from other folks. All right, because they might have other ideas about either how to include a first-year seminar as a requirement in general education, or questions about why we do that and what it might mean. They might have ideas about what we continue to have required and what we moved into the choice category. So if there aren't any other questions about what we've said so far, I think the best use of our time, and this is would be for you now to start talking together, all of us, about where we see problems, where we see opportunities, whether we think this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, or well, something other than that. So someone's got a hand up. Go, and it's Magdalena.
me.
So Magdalena, yes.
Yeah, so I have several questions, but
Yes.
the first question was whether the whether the first year advisors were consulted on this, because it definitely creates a lot of very important constraints for the incoming freshmen. And since it has to be taken in the first, I'm assuming in the first semester, isn't it more important for students to take the classes that they're supposed to take for their major requirements, which might leave them with very little choice of what signature seminar they're going to take? And if it's required, they might end up with something they really, really don't want, because that's the only one that fits in their schedule. That was my first question. I'll save the other ones for later.
Chris?
Say that again.
Do you want me to take this one, Chris?
Yes, go ahead, Rameen. Thank you,
So
Zoe. Or Magdalena.
I think that's a legitimate question, but SUNY Oswego has but a handful of programs that actually have that major constraint in their first semester. Most of our programs are somewhere in the 30 to 50 credit requirement for the majors, and for that reason, it doesn't tend to be the case that the students have to take 3 or 4 specific courses in that major. And we have always had our students take first choice. So in some respect for us, we are in effect replacing first choice with signature requirement. So we're not anticipating that to be a problem.
So the F courses would go away?
That's correct.
Yes. Yep. Was that your second question, Magdalena, or?
No, another question was, what happens if a student fails this class? And how are they going to make it up if it's for freshmen?
That's a good question.
This has already happened once or twice, and we definitely need a solution for it. Maybe in some instances we may be able to offer spring semester trailer courses, as we do in other things, right? I mean, folks need to understand that we have Physics 1 and Physics 2 as an example, but we always offer a trailer Physics 1 in the second semester. And part of the reason why you do that is exactly what Magdalena said, to make sure students are able to satisfy the failure that they had in the first semester. So I think we will have opportunities to fix that, but that's definitely one that we have to fix.
Yep. Zoe, I saw your hand up earlier. Did your question get asked, or do you have something else?
I was also wondering about students who failed, but I do have another question, which is about what data you have about the effectiveness of those 1 credit GST classes, because basically the responses I've heard from students, just indirectly and not like I don't teach, I don't know anything about them, but the students have mostly hated them from what I can tell.
Thank you. Michelle, do you want to, or someone, who I don't know, or Kathy, do you want to speak to that, just in terms of the data that we've received regarding student satisfaction with the GST 104?
Mallory is in the process of pulling all of that together. She's
Yeah.
been on maternity leave up
Right.
until last week. So,
Yeah.
but you know, the data was positive prior to this semester. So we're waiting to see what this semester looks like.
Right, thank you. Yeah, and yeah, Zoe, that's a really good question, and it's good to hear that while there's, of course, anecdotal information is important, right? The student says, geez, I'm really not, this isn't really working for me, the 104 or whatever, right? Right. But you know, that, which is why it's good that we've gathered some data already that shows that by and large it's positive, right? And let's hope it continues to trend that way. But it's also going to be no matter what course it is, all right, whether it's a GST 104 or a FYS course or a lower division or upper division course, we're always going to try to figure out a way to make sure that students have the best possible experience while also learning what it is we want them to learn. You know,
Chris,
yes,
I
sir.
just want to add 2 points here. Okay, so the first point, Zoe, this is really important. We want to disaggregate this resource issue that we tended to ask first choice courses do before from the signature courses, disaggregate that and let the 1 credit seminar handle the campus resources, connecting students to clubs and organizations, et cetera, and don't put that on our faculty. So one of the things the 1 credit will do is that disaggregate these outcomes. They're critical outcomes for retention. We know that. But let us focus on the academic preparation of our students through the signature course, and let folks that know better about resources and connecting students to the community, the sense of belongingness to the campus and so on, let them handle that during an extended orientation with a 1 credit class. So that's point 1. I think that disaggregation will make sense because most of us didn't do a great job with that when we taught first choice. And I speak as one of them who taught first choice. Second point has to do with assessment. We have a pretty robust and mature assessment process for general education. And these 1 credit courses will be subjected to the same thing. We'll have a regular assessment process that would include them to make sure the outcomes that they're expected to meet are met. And frankly, Zoe, if students are dissatisfied with them, disenchanted, they don't like them, they don't want to be doing them, they're not helping us, right? So we kind of need to make sure that they are helping us, they're connecting our students to the campus and making them want to stay here, right? I mean, this is a retention effort, right? I mean, this is beyond anything else, is in an effort to make sure students come back the following year. And we kind of need these 1 credit courses along with signature courses help us do that.
Right. And the only other thing I'd add to that, Zoe, and everyone else, is that the council has also recognized that there may be in certain programs, all right, an already existing 1 credit course, all right, that can do that lift, right, all right. And if that's the case, and they make sure that the campus resources, the physical, the human, and the virtual resources that help a student, right, be well situated to succeed at SUNY Oswego. If that's also happening in, let's say, a 1 credit introduction to a particular discipline or major, fine. Right. It doesn't, but so that's a possibility as well. But as Rameen says, the seminar, the 3 credit course, is going to be it's a fine word, disaggregated, as it were, all right, but not disconnected, right, from 104, in the sense that we'll want to make sure that they're all given toward making sure that students start well here at SUNY Oswego, all right, so that everybody will benefit, not just them, but everybody throughout their entire time with us. Any other questions? If not, I've got a point that this might now be a good time to bring up. With regard to the seminars themselves, as Rameen said, the first choice courses or the F sections or we imagine will be right. We all should imagine or could imagine will be replaced by the first year seminars. The seminars are not meant to be foundational in a major or a discipline. They should not have a prerequisite, nor should they be a prerequisite for any other course in a major or discipline. That doesn't mean they can't be grounded in a discipline, of course, right? In fact, one of the things that we posit is that they should be multidisciplinary in nature, right? To look at something, a topic, an issue, a subject, call it what you will, from a variety of different perspectives, a variety of different points of view. And that too is in keeping with what we imagine to be one of the reasons why students complete general education, which is to give them the tools and abilities to look at something from the perspective of a social scientist, from the perspective of a humanist, from the perspective of an artist, and so on and so on and so on. All right, so don't think of these, at least we're not thinking of them, these courses as part of a major, but they might serve as a gateway to a major. They might not.
I do want to comment on disaggregation. There was a question on chat.
Yep.
I want to be clear. From my perspective, disaggregation is the format, right? I mean, let us, with our signature courses, focus on the material that we're going to be teaching and the students will be learning, and let the 1 credit seminar handle the resource issues or connecting to the campus elements that we used to fold into first choice. That was what I meant by disaggregation.
Okay. Thank you, Rameen. Carolina.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to perhaps a clarification regarding removing natural sciences from the options for the students. So I think in a way, leaving students more options may be beneficial because the students have different perspectives and they may want to take a natural science course. So I understand that you removed that option because it was already in the first part of the table, correct? What would take to perhaps, or what is the effect of actually leaving this option? What do you think?
That's a good question. Part of the thinking of removing that required course from the student choice category or group as well is to encourage the greatest degree of breadth in a student's general education. The one question, I'm going to get to your question, Zoe, excuse me, Carolina, because it's a very, very good one. One response would be to say, well, why is diversity and identity and social justice both required in the student choice? Why is world awareness still required but also student choice? And I suppose what we would say, or one response would be, well, because the institution has a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and therefore, and because DEI courses and world awareness courses cross-disciplinary boundaries and, broadly speaking, knowledge domains. They can be in humanities, they can also be in the natural sciences, in the fine arts, also in social behavioral science. We're more likely to see breadth there too. What it would mean to keep it there, it would certainly mean for students who are natural science majors that a course that they're taking as part of their major would also fulfill part of their general education. All right, but that would be at the expense, as you put that in scare quotation marks, of that breadth that we're hoping to get via general education. And the council has debated that, all right, and I'm sure the faculty is, as a whole, will debate that same question. you know, I can tell you what I think, but having majored in a natural science as an undergraduate as well as in the humanities, but all I can say right now is there's a question. We have asked the registrar's office to try to get us some data on this in terms of who's taking more than one natural science course, but and help correct me if I'm wrong in using this term, Rameen. It's just a little bit messy because when someone takes it, they might be a natural science major, but then the next semester they're not, and so. Rameen or Courtney, anything else to add to that I missed or that I misspoke? And
I'd like to offer a solution very quickly.
Okay.
I'd like to offer a solution. Could we make a smaller class of courses in natural sciences who actually can be also diversity and inclusion? They will have 2 valencies to, fulfill the diversity and inclusions requirements, because you can do that in sciences nevertheless.
Well, in fact, there is
It should be a smaller class, because definitely not all courses would fulfill this double valence, but perhaps some instructors may want to actually design this type of double valence course, which will be reflected in the perhaps title of the course, or just slight, the fact that they have this double valence and they can take it for this or for that or for.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there is 2 things. One, there is precedent for this as a chemistry course that's approved as a diversity, identity, and social justice in the U.S. course in that category. And in world awareness, we've got courses in the sciences that meet the learning outcomes in that category as well. So it's certainly possible, right? That whether or not natural science moves as an option, from being, no longer an option in student choice. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be trying to develop DEI courses in all our disciplines / majors. Rameen, you were going to add something?
Not to this one. I just wanted to bring up what Zoe was asking about. Maybe making things clear. We probably could, Zoe, separate the signature course and the seminar just for clarity, because they are 2 separate things from my view, if you think that would make it clear, but the requirement remains the same. The students have to do a signature and they have to do the 1 credit seminar. So if you think it's more clear to have them broken out, that's fine. But as long as it's clear, they'll need 1 of each basically in their first semester.
Among my various liabilities when it comes to Zoom meetings is forgetting to pay attention to any chats. So I apologize, Dan. I just looked. Dan asked a question: why is Western Civ no longer a choice? I'm an idiot. The category goes away from system beginning in fall 2023. It no longer exists, right? Right. And what that means is that if a student were to take a course here, oh, good, now I've completed a part of my general education, right? And then they transfer someplace else, all right? Suddenly they think they've got 3 hours done toward general education that they no longer have, all right? And this causes, it's just going to be a mess, all right? So what we've encouraged folks to do, right, for a better part of a year, is to think about ways to turn their Western civilization courses into world awareness courses. The learning outcomes of world awareness were changed enough so that having removed the predominantly, or if not exclusively, non-European and non-US in focus requirement, now a Western Civ course, provided it situates that material in relation to other regions of the world and global history, it's possible for them to be fulfilled. I'll give you a concrete example. All right, FLOSSY 235, the council approved at the end of last semester. That course, which was approved as Western Civ, was revised, so now it meets the learning outcomes for world awareness. Right, Courtney, my friend, go ahead.
Thanks, Chris. I was just wondering if you guys could speak a little bit to the kind of, I guess, infrastructure that might be created in the college to handle this program, which would involve our entire incoming class. So how would it be organized, kind of at the institutional level? And then in related to that, I want to go back to the topic of advisement, I guess, because as I understand it from having taught a first-year seminar, students don't select their first-year seminar at all. Right now, advisors do for them based on student expressed interest, but still students arrive in the courses not having selected it. And so is there any conversation about how we might tweak advisement in order to accommodate a program like this and to make it as powerful as it possibly could be on our campus?
Good question.
I'm going to let my bosses on the call, right? I mean, we've been working on the engine that will run this car for a while. So maybe Scott could comment on it, and I'll be happy to fill in whatever gaps he would want me to.
Yeah, sure. Let me do these questions somewhat backwards, and Kathy may want to jump in also on the advising thing. But let me address the advising thing first. It's not unique that they don't get to choose their first year seminars. They do provide preferences for courses and ideas based on majors, and and at that point, the advisors do kind of go in and do their magic and provide an initial set of courses, which then students have the ability to go in and change, right? So if they're put into a particular first year seminar and that's not the one they want, they do have an opportunity to go change. But I think, and Kathy can confirm this, I think they're asked to give some rankings or choices for what they may want to do in the first year seminar. So that's the advising thing. But that's true for all of the classes. I mean, they don't get to pick necessarily, at least in their first go around, which section of math they're going to be in, or which section of a bio course or whatever. We give them a set schedule that they can then go sort of adjust as they feel a need. In terms of the structure of resources.
Can I jump in there first, Scott?
Sure. Go ahead,
would say that it's an iterative process, right? So it's not like the advisor puts the student in a course and then, it's a done deal until I drop. There's a constant flow of communication that's happening between students and advisors all summer. And there is a ranking. So we're not just randomly putting students into a freshman seminar course that they didn't express any interest in at all. So it's a pretty sophisticated process that the advisors are managing, but the students are absolutely a part of.
Yeah, it's both emails, phone calls, maybe even text. I'm not sure. That's a lot of back and forth. Anyway, in terms of the structure, we've been talking a lot within Dean's Council, Rameen and I, specifically around structure and resources around the first year signature program. And my comment has always been regarding this as a starting point, that we have already made a decision on this campus to provide a first year class experience to all of our students from a resource perspective. Right now, every student must take a first choice class. That has a resource implication associated with it that we have already committed to long before I got here. Okay, so one of the issues that we have been talking about is how does that get restructured, right? How does that get reutilized, if you will, around campus, so that we're not offering however many sections of first choice classes, but instead are offering the appropriate number of first year signature courses, right? To allow for our students, our incoming freshmen to take that. The other structural elements, I guess I'll mention that I've brought up, again, I'm not sure how much it's been discussed within the Gen Ed Council. There are assessment opportunities around the signature course One of the learning outcomes that we are, a number of learning outcomes we are looking at that are embedded within our general education are explicitly discussed within the first year seminar. It actually allows us to do a little bit of, I'm going to say pre and post testing around our assessment around some of these areas, which is not a bad thing, to see how we're doing in terms of our scaffolding of some of these skills and development. So we can look at incoming students as freshmen, let's say around communication issues, and then look at it again later when they're juniors or seniors in other classes. I don't know, Courtney, am I getting at everything? What else did you want me to perhaps deal with on that?
Well, I guess you're certainly getting at a lot of what I was wondering about, Scott. I guess I was also just thinking, and this goes back to, was it Magdalena's question? Maybe, you know, the courses are, I mean, to call them multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary is maybe a little bit almost misleading. These are skill building courses, right? These are courses that help students develop skills that are transferable across disciplines without necessarily sort of being on the border of disciplines by subject matter or methodology or what have you. But I mean, I don't know, nobody's going to be forced to teach one of these courses. So if a professor or faculty member isn't comfortable with it, there's no, you know, no one has to lose any sleep over it because nobody's forced to teach these. But for those who do, I could imagine, for example, that having some sort of maybe training is too big a word, but organized meetings in which we collaborate about how best to teach, say, writing skills through these seminars. That would be a really good idea, right? And something that just conversation amongst the faculty teaching these courses would be really fruitful. But for that, we need somebody to organize those conversations. We need sort of a leadership of this program. So I guess infrastructurally, what will the first year seminar program look like in that sense? What are sort of some of the plans or ideas you guys are kicking around for that?
Yeah, Rameen, you want to take that based on our discussions?
Yeah, well, thanks for setting us up on that one, Courtney. You know,
I do what I can, Rameen, no problem.
You are good, you really are. We are thinking, I mean, I kicked this around with John Kane, and of course I've talked to my boss and Chris and other people, but our folks that are going to be running signature for us will also be involved. But we really think of a format similar to what we're doing with reading groups right now with SELT. Obviously, there is no book to read, but that kind of a format where potentially there may be some professional development on the front end of this, on how do you even begin to frame a course and so on. But I strongly believe that faculty can teach each other and help each other, and I think that format tends to pay dividends for us. So we're definitely going to try that in the spring, and then hopefully we can repeat that potentially ahead. But people will be a stipend to join it as they develop their courses. So I think that support, as you're talking about, I think, Courtney, is essential, because we don't want people building these in the vacuum. We definitely want them to have a good sense of what works and what the best ideas and best practices are. So that's definitely this spring, and I'm sure into next year.
Thank you, Rameen. I think, you know, tied to this too is, of course, also assessment, and you know, preparing the classes is one thing, but then also getting faculty on the same page so that we can have really useful assessment of these courses is also an important part of what that sort of support structure should do for the first year seminar program.
Yes. We're getting close to time, so but Magdalene's got her hand up, and I want to make sure we hear from her and from anybody else. So Go ahead,
A
Magdalene.
quick yes or no question. So I asked if the first year advisors from the advisement center were part of the discussion or not, because again, because of the logistics about how difficult it is to get an actual working schedule for incoming freshmen. How difficult is it now? So I got answer about that little bit, but I didn't get a yes or no for whether they were part of the discussion.
Well, that's a good question. I know when Michelle came and talked with us, she brought the perspective of first year programming, right? I don't know if we ever actually addressed, well, what will this mean for the work of first year advisors?
I'm talking about the people on the front line where they're actually putting the schedules together.
They've been a part of this. They've been a part of this conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, but there's another point which I wanted to make earlier in a different context, which was related to a question Courtney asked earlier too. You know, when you go from maybe a dozen sections of things to 70 sections of things, everything changes. Everything changes.
Yep.
So at this point, people say they want to do a signature course. Well, they're going to do one of 12 or 15 or whatever. But if you have 70, then there's the range of ability advisors will have in jigsawing the schedule as they always have to will be different than when you only have, 12 or 13 sections of something. So I just want to be clear, even if placing students in signature courses is a problem now, it doesn't mean it will be once you scale to a point where 1,500 seats are made available, right? I mean, that's not where we are at this point. So it's a little bit of a different issue at this point. There will be issues. Believe me, this is what I make my living doing, right? I mean, this will be an issue, but it's not the same issue. When you have a scarcity of resource seats at this time, people are going to end up with a section that maybe they didn't necessarily want. But I'm hoping with many more sections, we would have more flexibility in where we move our students into.
Thank you, Rameen. Scott?
Yeah, I guess I'll add on that. I mean, this is not, I mean, campuses are doing this all over the country and trying to figure out how to get students into, the best group of courses or the most preferred group of courses. So it's not unusual to see, let's say, for campuses that are offering first year seminars or signature courses, to ask students, give us a ranking of your top 4 or your top 5, and we'll do the best we can to meet it. This is very typical in this type of for a campus, for any campus that's doing this type of activity. So this is not new. Something I've been saying a lot to Rameen and a little bit to Chris and the deans is that, our first year curriculum right now is very wide open. I would argue, actually, it's probably a little too wide open right now. I mean, students have the opportunity, incoming freshmen, to take something like 500 different courses. It's really difficult to manage that type of thing from an advising issue. I actually would rather use our time thinking about the advisors on that issue, really just the breadth of their selections than on what I think is a little bit of an easier problem, which is, which of the following, 5 courses can we get them to rank as an example. So I'll shut up now.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions? Because we're getting close to time. All right. Well, then echo. It's a Robert Creeley poem. I'll just shut up. Thank you very, very much. I apologize if I missed questions in chat. I'll be really interesting to, and the council will be very interested to know any other thoughts you have or questions you have. Just to sum up, I think that we need to continue to think about things like natural sciences or not, right? We got to make clear that there's a disaggregation between the first year seminar and the 1 credit GST or such course. We have to work on advisement, and we as a council need to think about this question of should they be multidisciplinary, all right, or it would be best to say they can be multidisciplinary, but not must be. All right. Thank you very, very much, and I hope you have a great rest of your winter breakout.